Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk. There we go. Hi!
Hello!
Hello! Yes, we're having technical feline difficulties, but we decided to do it anyway.
Difficulties when it's a feline.
That's right. You know,
I guess the cat has finally decided I am not a danger.
right. We've been doing this since 2020.
Yes.
The cat's like, oh, it's okay. I'll go in.
And now she's just purring and purring.
And she's gonna pull stuff off.
Put the microphone down. We can have an ASMR before we get into the good stuff.
She tries to pull shit off. Oh, you're getting the biscuit.
She's making biscuits on my knee.
So that's the chaos that's going to ensue today. I feel like this is a sign. So we have a guest. Before we go any further, that's Persephone is also our guest. And
she should probably get top billing. I can go at the bottom. It's fine.
You're like, it's okay. It's fine.
I get it.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Torie Fox-Phillips. I am kind of a new-ish author, and despite the fact that I love everything like death and dismemberment, I write rom-coms. So
I guess that's my favorite fact.
I don't know how it happened, but it happened, and it turns out I'm really good at it. So I've got a couple books out there on Amazon. It's just Torie Fox because it's short and sweet and easy to remember. But yeah. This is where I live now in the rom-com world. I had to I'm such a hardcore horror person. Like the three aspects of my personality, according to everyone that knows me, is dad jokes, serial killers, and the band Hanson. So I don't know how this all works together, but this has been decided. So to write these rom-coms, I had to switch from watching my normal stuff, which is like supernatural and classic horror movies, to all of the holiday rom-com Hallmark stuff to shift my thinking, because the first one I wrote, I couldn't even swear at all, and there couldn't be any dirty language or visuals or anything. Everything's behind the doors. So it was culture shock.
No throbbing members.
No throbbing members. I had to get kind of special permission to say testes and tatas. That was
You need to make just a shirt and some stickers that say testes and tatas.
I think I need to make that happen. I do have a sticker person, not gonna lie. I made stickers for my last book, Third Night Stand, and it's this thing of 5 stickers, and they're fabulous, but I like testes and tatas better.
It's great. You just have that one for special events, special people that can take it.
Yeah.
I don't want to freak anybody out.
No, it's fine.
Dude, I'm sitting there. I know, because I write in different genres, right? But a lot of times, shit in my head wants to go to the dark side.
Always.
Here's my cozy mystery, and this happened. And you're like, no, don't do it. You can't do that. That's against the rules.
You cannot go that dark.
No.
It's so much more fun.
It really is.
It is.
It's a delight. Sometimes the worse it is, sometimes the more giddy I am. But
purging, you've got to get the blackness off your soul for a little bit and share it with the world until it settles back in, and then you go again.
That's right. But yeah, I remember when your first book came out, and I thought totally thought it was going to be horror or something, and I was looking at the cover, and I was all, huh.
Not at all what anyone expected. No, so I still have the horror stuff on the side, but now there's the whole thing of okay, now there has to be a separate pen name so that you can dissociate them from each other, so that if you like Torie Fox, you'd also like Megan Quinn and blah 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 blah. And so now I need the pen name for if you like Stephen King, you like this one, but I'm not that far in my journey yet.
Right. Yeah, that's always like that. I've even talked to a couple people on here about it, on the show, the pin names, because, oh my gosh, I only have so much energy and time. But yes. I'm there are definitely things I would need to separate probably from.
And there are
horror.
people who do entire personalities for their pen names, and they have separate Facebook accounts. I mean, all kinds of social media, not just Facebook, but
right.
And I'm you know what? I have enough personalities. I can't to have to manage them and give them different names.
Yeah, well, that was like so Stephen Koontz when he did it, and he had been writing, well, what would we call it? Military intrigue, I guess. And he decided to start writing romance as a woman. And so he set up a whole. You did it? No, he did a right brain for me way back when I first started, and it was at Carnegie. And yeah, and so he would even have his wife do the signings for him, so that, and she was this lovely little,
Deborah.
I guess I don't remember
the young.
Yeah.
She now has a career of her own writing,
or does she? You see what I'm saying? He set up a whole online zone, and it's his wife.
But she's writing the mystery thriller set in Vegas.
Okay.
Those have continued to come out since they split.
Okay. Good. I wonder if if he scrapped the romance then, or if he still has like this persona, but she doesn't do signings anymore. I don't know. It's a mystery.
I don't have the kind of energy for it. I was even trying to figure out, like, if I have a pen name, I'm like, how do I make the landing pages different on my website, but everything else the same?
Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just have to point to the domain. Boop. I know that sounded really simple, didn't it? You know what? I have a husband who does that. Yeah. I'm like, hey, point this domain right here. But yeah, you sign up for that, and then you can have it take you to a page. And I bet you can look up how to do that online. But that's all I can advise. I don't know. So super easy. I can't do it.
Like, I understand all the words and the theory and how it should be done. And then I go to try and do it, and I'm just like, I don't, you know what? One is fine. I'll just be Torie. It's fine.
Right. It's all right. So have you watched any of these horror TV shows that have come out recently? There's been this. It's just spawned.
Like which ones?
So Teacup, Grotesquerie. What was the one with?
I do want to watch the Grotesqueries. Has Niecy Nash in it?
Yes.
Is it good?
I don't know now. I heard something. I heard a spoiler, and now I'm mad about it. And
and I love her. I want to see that.
That's the thing. I spite watched it when I first started because somebody was bitching online. They were all, I can't take Niecy Nash as a cop seriously or whatever. And I was like, we'll bite her. Like, well, I'm going to watch it then. And then I didn't get back to it. Not that it wasn't intriguing and all, but then, I heard this thing, and I'm not going to say it because it'll ruin things for other people. But the thing is, it made it so that I thought if I watched it, I would be mad. Not about the spoiler, but about what this actually indicates in the show and all crap. So, I don't know. I'm going to watch that.
I do not have streaming services. I think I have Peacock, and that might be it. Like, I had a whole bunch that I was, sharing with friends, and then everyone cracked down, and I don't watch enough TV to care. Like, if I have any free time, it's either an audiobook or a physical book. So I'm so far behind in movies and TV shows and everything. But then I'm like, but let me tell you about these books.
Right.
Nobody wants to hear that. Okay.
I always want to hear that.
Yeah. What have you read it like?
I'm reading one right now, and of course I can't think of The Ghost House or something like that, but it's the tale of a haunted house, but it's from the neighbor's perspective. So the neighbors are watching all of these young couples move into this and it's a freshly built house, but there's something about it that it is it steals everything good about a person. So the architect who built it can no longer build houses. He has no creativity left. And the first couple that went in, all they wanted was a baby together. And the girl was had this weird relationship with her father. So naturally the baby never got born, and dad ended up having a heart attack. And it's so interesting. I love haunted house stories, and I've never read one like this where you're not ever actually in the haunted house. You are next door, and the neighbors are watching all of this stuff happen. And it's still so intriguing.
Ghost House or something.
Yeah, hold on. I've got it on Goodreads.
You got it on Goodreads.
I guess I got to read this.
It's really good. I don't even know how I picked it up or how it ended up on my to be read shelf, but it's so good. Yeah, just House Next Door by Anne Rivers Siddons, Siddons.
Yep.
Okay.
But it's really good. The House Next Door. I'm really enjoying it.
I feel like I've read something by her before.
Yeah.
Not that one, but something else, because I know that name.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've been reading all over the place because now I'm reviewing for Rocky Mountain Reader. So then I try and pick things that are not my standard when she sends out the list of, hey, here are the books that I have. And it's led me to read. Actually, I really appreciated at least one of them, To Die Beautiful. I really liked. But yeah, so I'm not reading my usual, which is just really mostly horror and then like, I read mystery and thriller a lot. And then I throw in a random memoir if I need to lighten stuff up for a little bit, or a comedy. And then it's back to that. So now it's not there.
I just spite read a book.
There we go. That should be the topic. What have you spite read or watched recently?
It's an author whose works I enjoy. I'm not going to name the author, but he broke from his normal milieu and wrote fantasy.
Okay.
So I picked up and read book 3 in the trilogy.
Oh.
And as I'm going along, I was like, I bet all these fucking names would make sense if I had read the first 2 books.
It's like reading the third Game of Thrones book without reading the other.
Yes. However, I will say, to credit this person, it was so well written that the story carried me along because I started seeing how disparate elements were going to come together. And one of them I went, aha, this is going to happen. And I did guess right. But some of it I'm like, I don't fucking know. How do you fight that? Because there's a big war. And the other one, there's a duo that writes, Preston and Child.
Yeah.
And this is a standalone by one of them. And I can't remember which one I feel really bad about. I think it's Preston. But it's frightening. It is frightening because at the end of the book, he talks about all the science and he goes, if some of this hasn't already happened, it's going to happen soon. And when you start the book, you go, this is just like Jurassic Park. And then one of the characters said, this is just like Jurassic Park. And the scientist just goes off on him. It is not. And he reads him the riot act. But it's set in Colorado. In a big valley surrounded by mountains in Colorado. And we have plenty of those. So that was a very good read. I can't remember what Extinct. It's either Extinct or Extinction. And it was really good.
It's not like over sciencey, like
No, because while the science is there, you're mostly concerned with the people.
My cat's back and she's rubbing against the door and making it bump into the filing cabinet. So that's it. Today is her day and she would like attention. Thank you. Seriously, usually they avoid us and we just hear them from a distance, like in the background of the show. But no, not today. Sorry, she just knocked it off. And B actually, with mad skill, just caught something, a big framed thing that was leaning against that.
That was my graceful move for the fucking month.
Yeah.
I used it. I will be falling down for the rest of November. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but the camera and the audio will be off, so it's fine. Like there will be no proof.
Right.
And Shannon's going to go, I have no idea what you're talking about. I didn't see it.
So I guess we should say we know Torie from Pikes Peak Writers. Are you doing anything at conference this year? Next year, really?
Yeah, I'm learning the admin role, I think. So like Laura and I are half and half. So she took the fun half and gave me the easy half. It probably is the easier half. I've looked at like the money spreadsheet and how you track everything. And I was like, no, just give me this thing where I have to organize everything and print it out. Like I can handle that one. But I'm learning that whole side of things. I think eventually to take that over, and then I'll still be doing contest. And at some point they're going to throw me in as MC again. Whatever they tell me at this point, like, I'm just like, I think I've done everything in some capacity in my lifetime. So I'm like, whatever you need to fill, like, I can probably figure it out in some capacity, except for actual conference director. I keep refusing that one. No, I'm not going to do it because I'm like, I'm still like, just like my full-time job is already super fun enough. And then everything being down in the Springs, and I can't say much because the current director was in like Korea or Japan. I don't know. She was abroad and still like just zoomed into everything and organized the heck out of it. And I was like, well, now I just can't live up to her, so I can't do it anyway.
I did admin 1 year because I traded. I was treasurer at the same time. and I'd been doing non-conference events, and I traded with Jen. So Jen took over non-conference events, and I took over admin. and then I don't even remember what I did after that. It's blurred now. Yeah. I did it for so long, and you've done it for so long. Like eventually you're like, I don't know. Oh yeah, I did do that job.
Yeah.
I was conference director one year.
Yeah.
And I did faculty a couple of times. Faculty was my favorite job. I also thought it was the hardest job.
Yeah, I think that was my least favorite one. Or maybe I just had mean faculty. I don't know. I got like yelled at and scolded a lot. And I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Who dare yell at you? Wait,
I'm not going to name names.
Okay,
but
no.
Who just got like really nasty with me over like silly, stupid things. And I'm just like, I'm sorry. Like, I literally have no idea what I'm doing. Can you just show up and do this thing, please?
Wow.
So I was like, I don't want to do that again. Like, I'll do the travel side or pick up and all of that. But I was like, I don't actually want to talk to people anymore.
Oh God, I had people hugging me. And I was like, okay, we're hugging now. It was when I met them. They're like, you're MB. And I was like, yes, just okay.
Yeah, no, I turned down conference director a couple of times. Like, nope. Don't even let you finish asking me. No.
Conference dirt.
I did non-conference events. I don't need to do conference. Like, ever in there. Bye.
Yep. And I was glutton enough for punishment to do both.
Oof.
Nope. I don't want to. So, yeah. Luckily, I never had to, like, nobody was ever nasty at non-conference events in terms of guests, but the nano people, I had like a war going with the local nano Rimo folks. And now I'm just like, oh, all of you are finally seeing what terrible people they are. I learned that early.
Oh my
God. And they continued to be shitty.
They did. Yep. They continued to be shitty and act like they had some sort of power over what anybody else did in November, which was interesting. I was like, I'm the wrong person for you to try and pick a fight with, you nerdy little dipshits. So if you thought you could bulldoze over me, I was not the one.
No.
So I enjoyed it. And then we had somebody come up and helping me in non-conference events eventually, who was insistent that they knew the local ML or whatever they were called and wanted to get it all set up again. And I was like, cool, you can deal with them and I will still do what I want to do.
And she learned they were not nice people.
They weren't nice to her either, even though she was friends with this person from well before they were doing the thing. Yeah, it was a very weird, big swollen head thing with them, like a big ego thing. So it was very strange. So yeah,
it was.
I stopped doing, I think I tried nano 1 year at the very beginning. And then after that, it became Shano Shoso Riot Sebmo.
Wait, say that again. What?
It changed every year depending on what my goals were, but it was Shano Shoso Riot Sebmo. It was Shannon's novel and short story writing, editing, and submitting month.
Oh my gosh.
I have goals for all of those things. And then I'd announce what those goals were on my blog at the beginning of the month and got other people to kind of do their own thing too. Because they were like, I can't write 50,000 words in a month, or I don't want to. And I was all, well, first of all, just do what you want to do and just set it as a goal and then use all that energy that's out in the atmosphere during November when everybody's doing that, right? Because then everybody's doing their word counts and all that. And I said, just join into that stuff. You don't have to do nano.
I love how much the entire publishing industry hates the month of December.
Yeah.
Because everybody writes their novel in a month and then submits it, which don't get me wrong. If you want to submit your novel, by all means do it. But for God's sake, proofread it.
Edit it.
Proof it and edit it.
Oh, yeah.
Ugh. I think my first book I actually wrote in NaNoWriMo. We've never done it official. My husband writes too. But he was writing a story and he was kind of going along the whole NaNoWriMo thing or whatever. And so I was like, oh, I'll write with you just to like support you. And then that was when I wrote my Fubar novel. It's a young adult zombie vampire apocalypse thing. And like, I was definitely that person. I was like 25, 26, I don't remember, young enough that I didn't know better, but I wrote this YA story in a month. It was something like, I don't know, it was like 120,000 words. It was way too long. It was way too much. And I thought it was the best thing that anyone had ever seen.
Of course it was.
I still do. I've edited it down to like 85, 90,000. Like I cut out a lot of words and like realized how truly awful it was. Like the story idea is great. I love my characters and everything, but it did not need to be over 100,000 words. It really didn't. So it's not now, and I love it. And that's probably the one that I will get a pen name for because I love. It's a whole quadrilogy, and it's all written, and I love everything about it. But I've also been. I think I'm in the triple digits at this point for rejections. So I had to put it on the shelf because my heart was like breaking because everyone has that like story of the soul or the heart or whatever you want to call it. And Fubar was mine and still is mine. And I was like, after 100+ no's, like, I just had to put it away.
Yes. Time to take a break for a little bit from it. Yeah, I kind of want to go back and visit the first actual novel that I fully wrote was YA, and it was post-apocalyptic, and I really enjoyed that. But I know that'll be so cliche riddled, right? Trope riddled, all of that. So I do want to go back and revisit it because I had the trilogy planned out and everything, and the first book written. But I figure I need to have so much time and energy when it comes to, because it's harder to rewrite something than to write it the first time, right? And so, but so much I've learned, but it was all this stuff. It was the love triangle and it was all that crap. And so.
I still have all of that and I still love it. I'm like, it is every YA trope that you can think of. Yep. But I'm going to make my head big or whatever. Like, I'm a good storyteller. I'm so good with dialogue. And so I'm like, everything around characters and dialogue was terrible in that first draft. But, like, I did at one point just completely and totally rewrite it from like a blank page. Like I had the actual written one up so that I could remember kind of how I did things. But when I had a more mature voice, I went back and did it. And I'm still just like, this is so good. Like, how is there so much not awesome stuff out there, but they've rejected me over 100 times? Like, whatever. I'm not bad.
Every time I end up reading a bad book or short story, so therefore, really, this can get published, especially if it gets accolades. And seriously, this gets all right. If this is what people want, then I just won't become famous because I am totally cool with not being famous for sucking.
Yeah, well, I am. I'm like, I know I'm good, but I'm not gonna. I also write whatever I want, so I'm never on trend. I'm never like the next new big thing or in the moment. I'm just like, I just want to write this. And so I did. Here, it's good. And they're like, oh, this is like so 3 years ago. Nobody wants to read this. And I'm like,
here's the thing. Yeah, I went to 20 books to 50K, and their whole big thing is right to market. Mm-hmm. But I also found that there's a ton of, say, urban fantasy authors there who are selling like gangbusters, but any agent is going to tell you that urban fantasy doesn't sell, but it clearly does, but not in the way that traditional publishers want, apparently. So these people are doing great because they're the only ones doing it, because agents stopped taking and publishers stopped taking urban fantasy ages ago, except for established writers.
Well, someone I know who's a romance author was told, relatively successful, I mean, not one of the huge names, but a good writer. She was told nobody wants cowboy stories anymore.
False.
Oh my God, I love a cowboy.
Yes, I know you do. And so she's independently publishing them.
That's funny because I even have my pen name picked out for it and everything for romance. Give it a try. And it was totally going to be cowboys. It has to be cowboys.
But they're still selling. The other thing I heard in the romance market, she told me, because I don't.
Well, she's also very good at doing hybrid and making things work.
But apparently publishers in the romance genre are going to independent authors who are successful, taking what they're successful at, doing the hard covers and letting them keep the ebook rights.
Yeah, I've seen that.
So, but so they're not taking any chances on anybody new.
I feel like you're talking about this person, and if I'm right about who the
Yes,
person is,
probably.
we had them on here, and we had them as a guest. So
Like, I think we did have.
yes, we did.
I'm like, did we?
Might have been around when one of those cowboy romances came out.
Probably.
So that's funny, but
She did. I can say her name. It's Jenny
it's
Marks.
Jenny Marks. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. I was like, she's the cowboy romance person in my world that I know of.
I actually reviewed her most recent cozy mystery, which is a beekeeping mystery. Oh my God, they're delightful. I'm like, forget writing romance. Just write these cozy mysteries because she gets such a Lucy and Ethel vibe.
Mm-hmm.
They're so slapsticky funny. I love them.
Yes, admittedly, I haven't read her romances because I don't read a ton of romances, even though I went through a phase as a teenager where I devoured just because my mom, that's what she had on the shelves was romance. And I started devouring those and then Harlequins, right?
Yep.
So I was like, maybe they think different. I don't know.
And who was the woman who published so many books?
I mean, there were a couple. I liked Fern
Michaels.
Yes. But she had Jude Devereaux, who had a bunch of them. And then, of course, Nora Roberts.
Right.
Blah, blah, blah.
No, older than that. She had fluffy little old lady hair. If I could think of her name. I read so many of them. My grandmother had them. And I devoured every book that came with them, grabbing distance. At some point, we'll be talking, and I'm going to yell out.
Yeah, we're just going to have Kelly Clarkson.
We'll have a small Tourette's moment, and we'll be done. It'll be good.
But I liked her women's fiction series that she did, the Book Turners or whatever her group was, and it was little mysteries, I think. So I could totally check out the mysteries.
The Page Turners.
There it is, Page Turners. All right.
Are you good at starting?
I'll start. Time. It's time.
Because the three of us could sit here and just chat.
Yeah. So Torie will probably recognize this person because it is a serial killer. So we'll see. But this is the closest I get to a trigger warning because I don't enjoy them. But he was a nasty customer. He wasn't prolific, but he was nasty. So I'm covering the lust killer or the shoe fetish killer, which just seems so appropriate after Sam was on recently. We had our
photography. I learned something new in that episode.
Oh, good.
Lunars. Okay. On May 10th, 1969, two men went fishing on the Long Tom River, which was a tributary of the Willamette in Oregon. When they pulled out what they thought was a large package, they discovered a woman's body inside. She was wearing a coat and had been tied to a vehicle gearbox or auto transmission, depending upon the source. Like there were so many different attributions of what they were all car engine parts. Okay. We're just going to establish that. And if somebody doesn't agree with which part I chose from which source, suck it. Authorities were able to identify her as Linda Staley. And though the water had removed evidence, they did determine she'd been strangled. They couldn't tell if she'd been raped. Oddly, there were also needle marks under her armpits that were surrounded by charred flesh. This appeared to have occurred after death, so remember that. Police divers found a second body 2 days later, not far from that one, this one tied to a 6-cylinder engine. She was wearing her own clothes, a skirt and sweater, but a 38D bra that was clearly not hers, and it had been stuffed with brown paper towels. She'd been in the water longer than Linda, so it was slightly harder to determine cause of death, but they were able to say it was either strangulation or smothering. Both women had been tied up with the same brand of cord, with some copper wiring with both bodies and with an unusual knot used on both. With the auto components used to weigh the women down, police started questioning local garages and junkyards, a natural starting point. They also spoke with friends and family members of the two victims. Karen had been an OSU student, that's Oregon State University, where my dad went, and where my daughter wants to go. So they spoke to fellow students and teachers, which led them to their first real lead. Multiple OSU students had gotten random phone calls from a man claiming to be a Vietnam vet. He asked them out on dates. Of course, most of the women had turned him down or just hung up without saying anything, figuring it was a prank call, but at least one woman had felt bad for him and agreed to go out on a single date with him shortly after the discovery of the two women. He was 30, white, freckled, about 6 feet tall, and 200 pounds, with light red hair. The woman said he picked her up in a station wagon. It was filthy. There were kids' clothes inside. She got the vibe that he was married and had children. The date didn't go well. He made her feel uncomfortable. Oh, yeah.
I'm like, the way you set it up, how could the date have gone
It went
well?
great. She loved him. Even making statements about the 2 men found in the water. Like, he kept asking her stuff like, well, how do you know I wouldn't take you to the river and strangle you? And just kept doing this shit. Despite his behavior, she hadn't told him off. Police asked her to let them know if he called her, and she didn't have his number because she didn't have his number. He had called her, and this was in the 60s. So you can star 69 and you didn't have caller ID. So sure enough, he called, and she set up a date with him and notified police of the date and time. Instead of her meeting him on May 20th, he showed up to find police waiting for him. The man's name was Jerry Brudos. And when police looked into him, they found he had a history of violence toward women. Suddenly, elements came together, both for the women who'd been found and for women who'd disappeared or who had had frightening experiences recently. Brudos was born in 1939 in South Dakota. He had an older brother and a mom who was so pissed she had another son instead of a daughter that she mentally abused him throughout his childhood. His dad had a short temper, but wasn't known to have abused his family. He didn't hold steady work, so moved the family around a lot for seasonal work, which is how they eventually ended up in Oregon. They actually were mostly in the Pacific Northwest. They dipped down to California a little bit, settled in Oregon ultimately. He had both a foot and shoe fetish, that Brudos did, which started by the age of 5. That year, he tried to steal the high heels off a teenage girl's feet when she was sleeping on his bed during a gathering at the house, and he found a pair of heels at a junkyard that he wore home. His mother beat him for it, and then she burned the shoes while he watched, because this is how you fix sexual issues.
Well, yeah.
When he was 7,
With
not that
fire.
it's an issue, but anyway, when he was 7, he tried to steal a teacher's pair of spare heels, because she always wore high heels, and she always kept a spare under her desk in the classroom, just in case. Maybe she habitually broke her heels. I don't know. But he got caught by a classmate, and that classmate turned him in, and the teacher shamed him in front of the class. Around this age, he failed 2nd grade and started having a bunch of health problems, including migraines, measles, swollen lymph nodes, and other complaints that resulted in several minor surgeries. The migraines would recur in adulthood. At puberty, he developed a fetish for lingerie and women's underwear, and a friend helped it along by sneaking him into his sister's rooms. He had several of their sisters to play with and, yes, smell their underwear, which further led to him sneaking into the houses of neighbors to steal their underwear. He would occasionally also wear it. His mother started physically punishing him when she found night emissions on his sheets. You see, I put that so nicely.
Good.
Compounding his sexual issues. So he was just being shamed for all
Everything.
sorts of things. He was small, quiet, and awkward as a teen, and he had acne. Due to a combination of factors, he was a late bloomer when it came to approaching girls. Instead, he stalked them, photographing them without anyone knowing. Partway into his teen years, his fantasies turned dark. He started fantasizing about taking girls captive. Though as sheltered as he was, he didn't know what sex was yet. And so that wasn't actually part of the fantasies. He had learned how to masturbate, they said, but he really didn't know what the actual act of sex was. He didn't know anything about it. That same year, he got a girl into his room by saying he knew where her missing underwear were, left her there, came back in wearing a mask. He used a knife to force her to strip, took pictures, left the room, and came back in without the mask, like all his hair all tousled and stuff, to claim he'd been locked in the barn by a masked man with a knife. Accounts I found differed on whether she went to the police, but it clearly didn't go anywhere, if he did. Emboldened by his success, he started kidnapping more girls using the knife, but now he took them to the barn, and he locked them in the corn crib. Instead of a mask, he'd force them to undress. So he was unmasked, photograph them, leave, then come back in a different outfit. So he could tell them his violent twin brother had attacked them. Then he would save them, and quote, save and beg that they not turn his brother in because he was in therapy and he was working to improve. And man, this would set him back.
What a conniver.
None of the girls told.
Oh my God.
He did. No.
Well, they were
But
being,
also, it's that era. And,
yes, they were being good girls.
And also, a lot don't want to go and to the police, right? Just to begin with, because it's embarrassing and et cetera, et cetera. He did attempt fondling some of them, but it never went further than that. When he was 17 in April 1956, he actually got a girl to accept a date. But after picking her up, he took her to the middle of nowhere, parked, and told her to take her clothes off because I guess this is how he thought things work now. She refused. Enraged, he got out and pulled her from the car, beating her to the point of a broken nose before a couple who was driving by noticed what was happening. He made up a bunch of stories when they came up, and he said, oh, she fell out and I was helping her up. And then he said, this man attacked us and he ran into the woods. Well, she's not unconscious. The couple had them both get in the car and then took them to the police station because they didn't believe the stories. But, they got him in, probably like, oh my gosh, that's Joe, come with us, He told police he'd just lost his temper. That was all. They arrested him for assault and battery, searched his car, and found some of his photos and some girls' underwear in there that were not hers. He was charged and treated as a juvenile at Oregon State Hospital in Salem for months. If you guys haven't been there, it's a huge, mental health hospital. It's been around for ages, although it's been redone. But like when my mom worked at a theater in Salem, they would have basically what I've always referred to as asylum day out because she had all these stories, and one freaking person would escort them from this hospital to the movie theater and take them in there. And so just shit would go down. There are stories that she would talk about. They'd have to go to the bathroom and so they'd be all by themselves away from whoever this one little guide person. So anyway, Oregon State Hospital for me just always brings up all those memories of the stories she told me. So he was there for 9 months, but he was able to come and go. He was able to go to high school still during the day. So he'd go to school, then he'd be treated at night and on the weekends.
Well, I'm wondering how well this was known at the time by like neighbors and friends, because I would be pissed as hell if my daughter was going to school with somebody who was known to assault teenage girls. I would be furious.
They found him to have schizotypal personality disorder and as they said, a hatred of women because of his mother's treatment of him. It should be noted, though, that schizophrenia and related conditions were very frequently diagnosed at that time. If there was anything going on with you, you were schizotypal, schizophrenic, whatever. He graduated from Corvallis High School in 1957 and attempted both OSU and a vocational college before he gave up and joined the Army in 1959. Only lasting from March to October before being discharged as psychologically unfit, though he was good at his job as a communications tech. He had started having dreams that a Korean woman was seducing him, and he'd gone to the chaplain about this, which they took to be an obsession. He moved back home where his parents made him sleep in the shed because his older brother, had a bedroom. They had moved into a small 2-bedroom. So if his brother was gone, he was allowed to sleep in his bed. Otherwise, then you can be in the shed or sometimes on the couch. And he got a job as an electrical engineer. He worked for a radio station. He did a bunch of stuff. He was somebody who couldn't keep a steady job. During this time, he followed a couple women getting into one of their homes. He strangled her and took her shoes. The other woman was able to fend him off, but he grabbed one of her shoes and took off with it. Now, neither of them died. In 1961, he was introduced to Ralphine Schwindler. She was the first person he had sex with. So understand, he was like around 22. I'm not going to stop and do the math. Anyway, this is the first time he had sex, and he got her pregnant. They married on September 30th, 1961, when she was a month pregnant. But so, of course, it wasn't visible to anybody else. So you can pull that one off in that day, right? In their early marriage, and for a bit after the birth of their daughter, Teresa, in 1962, he was able to get his wife to do the housework in nothing but high heels. And I was like, sorry, that's not even a weird thing for a dude to want to say. Like, okay. But he would photograph her sometimes, and then this often led to sex for them. But when their daughter reached toddlerhood, say that 3 times fast, Ralphine became uncomfortable doing this in case their daughter saw it. Plus, she was busy and tired and had become turned off by his weight gain. So they rarely, which I was like, rude. You get mad if a dude does that. So they rarely had sex anymore at all, even. Surprisingly, he was never abusive to his wife. I just wanted to put that out there because I found that interesting, not even emotionally. And this continued to be true even after they stopped having sex in general. He did, however, start going after victims again after his wife refused to allow him in the delivery room. He basically said this was his trigger to go back to doing it during their son's birth in 1967. I think she was over him at that point. He started stealing shoes and undergarments again first, easing himself back in. And one day he saw a woman with fancy high heels on and followed her home, where he broke in, strangled her, raped her. This is where he crossed that line while she was unconscious, and stole her shoes. He said he didn't intend to rape her at first, but was turned on by her unconscious form and the fact that she was at his mercy entirely. That was what got him. And the thing is, every one of these girls, it was the shoes that drew his attention to begin with, which is such a scary thing to think, that wearing your freaking shoes that you like just is what lures a serial killer to you. He also was big on mini skirts. He loved a mini. If they had on high heels and a mini skirt, he was going to follow them.
There are a lot of men who would.
Right. I know. I'm just, but that the time frame was good for this,
home,
right?
But...
Yeah. And I was trying to think, like, late 60s. I feel like we're going to have a cat fight in a minute. In the 60s, now there's two of them, and they don't like each other, and they're stalking each other. Anyway, I was like, how many women were wearing actual, like, nice high heels in the 60s? I don't think it was the majority. I think there was a push and a resistance, right? And so some of them were doing the mini skirts and stuff.
Oh, I think there were. I think there were a lot still wearing the high heels because the counterculture was there. But you know, if you were in the middle of the country, or out of the metropolitan areas, you're kind of lagging behind the times. Says someone who grew up in one.
The couple moved around a couple times, but settled in Salem in 1968 with their 2 children. Though he continued working in engineering, he took on extra work to bring in more money, which often consisted of working on vehicles in his garage to fix them up. And that's where he would get parts he would later use to weigh down and fix. I was like, who just has engines sitting around? Due to Ralphine's distance, he spent a lot of time in the garage and their basement, and eventually stopped allowing his wife and kids in these areas. That was the rule. You don't come into daddy's areas. On January 26, 1968, a 19-year-old Linda Slauson knocked on his door. She was selling encyclopedias door to door in hopes of funding college. Yep, the encyclopedias. He told her that he was interested and invited her in, taking her down to the basement where they wouldn't be interrupted. He gave her a stool and allowed her to launch into her sales pitch. As she talked, he took a piece of wood and bludgeoned her with it to knock her out so he could strangle her.
Good God.
He hid her beneath the stairs so he could go upstairs and get everyone out of the house. Then went back down to the basement and undressed Linda. He was delighted to discover she was wearing red lingerie under her clothing, and proceeded to spend hours changing her clothing and shoes while masturbating and having sex with the body, back and forth. Said when he masturbated, he would keep his hand, like, touch her feet and ankles. So that was his thing. Taking photos of her in the different clothing throughout. When finished, he cut her foot off with a hacksaw, storing the body part in the back of the basement freezer. Tied her to a cylinder head and chucked her body over a railing. Though he couldn't remember where when asked later. He also kept the encyclopedias she brought with her as his trophies. I mean, other than the foot. On November 26th, oh, and by the way, to get the family out, there were mixed stories on who was home. Like, one, it just said it was his mother and the daughter, so the wife and the son were out. And the son was only about 2 at this point, I think. And he basically said, oh, hey, here's some money. Go out and get burgers because I'm going to be really busy on this project. I'm working this project. On November 26, 1968, he came across Jan Whitney, a 23-year-old whose car had broken down on I-5. She had picked up a couple hitchhikers before the breakdown, and they were all now at a rest area. He told her he knew how to fix the car after he looked at it, but had to go to his house to get some parts and tools, and that he'd give the hitchhikers a ride to where they were going. They all piled in, with Jan in the passenger seat next to Brudos, and he dropped them off and took Jan home with him. He left the car in the driveway, with Jan seated inside, went into the garage to grab a leather strap from an item of luggage, entered the back of the car, and used the strap to pull her backwards and strangle her. Still inside the station wagon, in his driveway, in suburbia, he had sex with her body, then snuck her into the garage so he could dress her in various clothing items and shoes and continue committing his usual necrophilia. He used a pulley to hoist her up and left her hanging there for 2 days to do this, to continue that debasement of her body, photographing her throughout. This time he sliced off one of her breasts, and he tried to create a paperweight using epoxy, but it wouldn't set. It wasn't right. So he instead used sawdust to stuff it and pinned it up on a board in the garage. 2 days later.
That's disgusting.
I only laugh because I don't know what else to do with this information.
He's just so fucked up. He really is.
Paperweight. Okay.
A paperweight.
Yeah, I think
Just wait. There's 2 days later, a drunk driver veered off the road and crashed into their garage while her body was still hanging there. This could have been the end. This could have been the end if they had done just a little bit more.
I've read this novel. I love novels that start like this.
Oh, yeah.
There's
probably inspired by this.
Yeah, I imagine so.
A police officer inspected the damage from outside, but never went into the garage. And though he peered through the hole, he could not see the body where it was hanging. Freaked out by the close call, Brudos tied her to a railroad iron. I'm like, okay, why'd you randomly have that, dude? What does your garage look like? And threw her body and Linda's foot into the Willamette. Because this isn't the first serial killer I've covered that threw bodies in the Willamette. So I'm just going to tell you, I will never fucking swim in that river. I have swum off in creeks and shit that came off it, though. On March 27th, 1969, dressed in women's clothing, he turned into the parking lot of Meyer and Frank, a department store, to chase down a woman he had seen in a mini skirt and heels. She got away, but an 18-year-old OSU student named Karen Sprinker, who was on her way to meet her mom for lunch, was not so lucky. He kidnapped her at gunpoint and took her to his house. She pled with him not to hurt her, promising to do anything he wanted. She said she was a virgin and that she was on her period, like that old, you don't want to do this. I'm on my period. It'll be a mess. Now, I don't think that probably ever works, sadly. He made her undress anyway, raped her, while alive, by the way, then made her try on different outfits and heels for him while he took pictures. Despite her cooperation, he eventually tied her hands behind her back, then tied a rope around her neck, taunting her by asking if it was too tight. Yeah. She said it was. He put the rope over a beam and pulled, hanging her that way, just holding her and watching. He used her body for hours before cutting off both breasts and molding them with plastic. Still wary of keeping a full body around, he tied her to the 6-cylinder engine head, threw her into the Willamette. I do have a picture of her that he took that's only from, it's been cropped, so I will post it. And because when you see it online, people are like, why doesn't she look more scared? And there's people who've suffered through these intense traumas who were like, you shut that shit off. When you're in survival mode, you're not just going to look scared all the time necessarily. On April 21st, 1969, he followed 24-year-old Sharon Wood into the basement of a parking garage, tapped her on the shoulder, and pointed a gun at her. He got her into an arm lock, but she wouldn't go down easy, fighting him with everything she had. She even managed at one point to grab his wrist and twist it so the gun was pointing away from her. She was screaming through this, and he tried to cover her mouth with his hand, but she bit him. He slammed her head into the concrete, which she didn't get fully knocked out, but she was phased and she was lying there all dazed. And another car happened to drive up and he booked it. So she lived. The next day he saw 15-year-old Gloria Smith. Now, a lot of the accounts said Leanne Brumley, but I think that's because Anne Rule wrote the book, The Lust Killer, about him, and she disguised all these women's names, including his wife, who's Darcy in the book. So I think the real name's Gloria Smith and it's out there, but I have no idea. So she was walking home from school. He pulled the gun on her and tried to force her into the green VW Carmen Ghia he'd parked. He grabbed her coat. I mentioned that for a reason. So she couldn't run, but she asked him to let go and that she'd walk beside him. So he did. Gloria happened to see a woman out in her yard, and she started screaming and ran for this woman. So Brudos hopped in the car and he drove away. His luck improved on April 23rd in Beaverton at the Lloyd Center Mall. That's where I got all my X-File collector's card. Where he approached Linda Saley, a 22-year-old engaged Portland State University student, in the parking lot. He told her he was a cop and that he'd seen her steal something inside. She had a bag with gifts that she'd gotten for her fiance, who she was supposed to have dinner with that night. He even had a fake badge. Once he had her in the car, he said, I'm actually kidnapping you. I'm going to be going for a ransom, so you're stuck with me now. When they got to his house around sunset, he parked in the garage, which was detached, and made her walk across the yard, intending to take her to the basement since his family was supposed to be out. But all of a sudden, his wife pops out onto the porch because she'd heard the car in the garage and all that. And she's like, hey, dinner's ready. She did not see Linda because Linda was back there, and he held up a hand and signaled to her to, stay there, and she froze. He said, I'll be right in, took Linda back to the garage and tied her up, then went inside to eat dinner with his family. After he'd finished, he went back outside, finding she had gotten out of the cord he'd tied her up with, but hadn't left. This one just kills me. Perhaps she still thought he was a cop, but he'd said he was kidnapping her. I mean, all these stories are from him afterwards, by the way, so who knows like how much is true. Anyway, she's still there. She did fight back because when he tried to put a leather strap around her throat, but he managed to get it around her and strangle her until she passed out, not quite dead. Then he continued to strangle her as he raped her until she died during the act. He hung her up like he had the others, then tried to reanimate her by sticking hypodermic needles into her rib cage. Remember what I said about the one body beneath her armpits?
Oh, yeah.
And then running electrical currents through them. The only thing that happened was the flesh burning. Like he wanted the body to start kind of seizing, twitching, that sort of thing, because he had been electrocuted. He said this was all, he was curious because he'd been electrocuted at work at some point. But instead it just caused those burns, so he gave up. And he kept her another day for his ongoing needs. Then he tied her to the gearbox and threw her in the Willamette. This one, he made a mold of her breasts, but didn't cut them off. Whatever, dude. Back to the investigation. Police, upon discovering his address, which he'd fudged when they asked for his information in that earlier arrest, even though he'd given his name and all that, but he gave the wrong address, were able to trace and see that in his previous home, he'd lived near where Linda Slauson had disappeared at the time it occurred, and that he now lived only a couple blocks from the store where he'd found Karen Sprinker. He also had been in possession of his mother's green Carmen Villa when that attempted abduction of Gloria Smith occurred.
Isn't that a small, tiny little car?
Yeah.
How would you kidnap someone in it? I mean,
I don't know. I feel like it'd be easier to hold somebody in a smaller car than the station wagon he normally uses. Just because you've got them right next to you. They can't like get into the, I don't know.
I just picture them thrashing, trying not to be stuffed in the car. I don't know.
The guy who tried to kidnap me in Maryland was in some little green car, but I swear it was a Toyota or something like that. Gloria recognized him and made the ID for police. And with that identification, they were able to get a search warrant for his home. So things are breaking. As they searched, police found the lingerie, shoes, all those Polaroids of the women, both alive and dead, including one incredibly damning photo where he'd set up a mirror under her feet where she was hanging. And he actually managed to take a photo of himself in that mirror when he was taking the picture. So he couldn't even claim he wasn't the one taking the photos because you could see the Polaroid camera and him in the freaking picture. Phone numbers for dorms and sorority houses. He had lists. The same copper wire that had been used to bind the women's bodies to the engine components. Rope matching that found on the bodies. Of course, various engine components in general. And one of the epoxy-coated breasts that he had actually placed on his living room mantle. It was in his living room where his family was existing. Yep. His wife just thought it was a paper. She didn't realize.
Ew.
I kind of want to see a picture of how this, what this looked like and how you could not know what it was. I don't understand. Okay. He was a free man when they made these discoveries, but they put him under surveillance until they had enough evidence. He was arrested May 29th, 1969. He wasn't at home when they went to arrest him, but a call was put out and the highway patrol found the family station wagon on its way to Portland. When they pulled it over, Ralphine was driving and Brutus was hiding under a blanket in the back. From jail, he called her and asked her to destroy evidence like some clothing and stuff that the police hadn't yet found, and she refused. While he initially denied having done anything wrong, he did finally confess in June to 4 of the murders. The police had only connected him with 3 of them. He was very open from this point forward on his sexual proclivities and the crimes he'd committed. On June 4th, he was officially charged for 3 of the murders since Linda Slauson was still a Jane Doe at the time. They were able to put together his story with the car they'd found and all that good stuff. He pled not guilty by reason of insanity, and psychiatrists found him competent to stand trial, but they did feel he had antisocial personality disorder, which is like, I feel like 90% of these psychos at this point. He pled guilty on June 27th, 1969, just 3 days before his trial was supposed to occur, and was given 3 consecutive life sentences for the three first-degree murders. His appeals were ignored, and he was placed in Oregon State Penitentiary. Again, like so many connections in this, where my cousin works as a guard. They found Jan Whitney's body in July, 1 mile from where he'd said he dumped her in the Willamette. The police went one further, though, arresting his wife as an accomplice. Brudos had been very clear that she had no knowledge of his crimes and that he'd forced her to drive him to Portland, but they couldn't believe that she'd never known of his victims when they were mostly killed right there in that home, and there was a freaking breast paperweight on the mantle. And their bodies were kept for days, and they couldn't have smelled good, and she told them she had been barred from his workshops, like I've mentioned, that he'd even insisted she not go near the freezer in the basement, putting any groceries there himself, making her tell him what needed to be taken out when she needed something from it, all in the name of privacy for his projects. The garage was off limits because he said he developed photographs in there, which I'm so confused because he was using a Polaroid, but maybe he wasn't exclusively using one, or maybe she didn't know that shit didn't need to be developed. Yeah. An eyewitness came forward claiming they had seen her helping him force a woman into their house, but other witnesses went against this. It's a whole chunk of story in the Ann Rule book. They charged Ralphine with aiding and abetting in Karen Sprinker's first-degree murder on August 7th. She stood trial in September, where they made 7-year-old Teresa go through questioning, and she was acquitted in October. She immediately changed her name, and after getting custody of her children back from the state, divorced Brudos, moved them out of state, never contacting her ex again. Officials never found sufficient evidence to charge him with Linda Lawson's murder, despite his confession and Polaroids of her feet and ankles, which he identified, but he hadn't photographed her face or anything else that was identifiable. They never found her body. In prison, he was assaulted multiple times, but didn't turn in his attackers. He was considered a model prisoner who used his skills to help with various electronics, and they allowed him to order catalogs that had high heels and women's underwear in them. He never showed remorse for the women he'd killed. In fact, when asked about it, there was one guy who was interviewing, and he asked if he felt any remorse, and he took a piece of paper, wadded it up, and threw it on the floor and said, "I care that much." Oh. He was thought to be a psychopath. He died of cancer in prison on March 28th, 2006, at the age of 67. He'd been in prison just over 36 years. He claimed the entire time he was in prison that he loved his wife. And honestly, the way he acted, he kind of must have in his own way, because he made that he did not want her to get in trouble. He didn't abuse her. He didn't force her to have sex when she didn't want to have sex. And he's a rapist, like that's the point I'm making there. So anyway, my sources were The Fetish Killer by Catherine Ramsland on Crime Library, Department of Psychology, Radford University paper, That Oregon Life, biography, The Lust Killer by Ann Gould, and Wikipedia. That's Jerry Brudos. Wow. And I'm super glad that he only made it through 4 women. Mm-hmm. Because he was just nasty. Yeah. He's a terrible person.
Yeah.
I did hear that story before.
Yeah.
Why would the prison allow him to order magazines?
I don't know. Did they allow porn? If they allowed porn, then that was a porn. I don't know.
That just doesn't make sense to me. It would seem like it was just, granted, he's in prison, but it just seems to be fueling the fire, not.
Yeah. I guess they pretty much figured he wasn't getting out, even though he had the parole hearings over and over. At one of them, which was not his last one, they basically made a unanimous decision that because he still was not showing remorse, he would never get out. And I think that was around year 30 where they were like, okay, he's not, I mean, he is a model prisoner, sure, because there's no women. Mm-hmm. No women for him to do anything to. Of course, he's a model prisoner. He's not interested in those dudes. And yeah, wow. So they said he's not getting out, but then he continued to go to the hearings. But there were always victims and family members of victims at those hearings too, because they were not ever going to let him get out. Mm-hmm. And at one point, this must have been before the rules where you couldn't profit or something. They let him make these leather keychains with his name on them to sell. And one of those victims that he tried to kidnap or something, I don't remember which one it was, she bought one of them so she could have it as her own souvenir of what she had survived and what could have happened and all of that. Huh. Yeah. There's a lot. There's a lot to this
bizarre. Guy. Yeah. And awful.
Yeah, he was grody. I can't get over the freaking paperweight in the living room. I just can't. It couldn't have, I guess, really looked like an actual at that point.
It's what I'm simultaneously trying to think about and not think about. Is like,
Yeah.
what does it actually look like, and how did she not recognize her
Yeah.
own anatomy on?
Or did
the
she just think it was
mantelpiece?
fake and she realized it? But what, your pervy husband went? If she wouldn't even do the nude vacuuming because her daughter was 2, why would she allow what looked like a breast to be in the living room around her kids, especially with a son or whatever? So it couldn't have looked.
It couldn't.
It must have been a bad epoxy. I don't know, but the cops recognized it.
I know. There's too many.
There are no words.
I know. Like I said, trying to imagine, but at the same time, I'm like, let's not. I don't actually want to know. Like,
No, I know my brain keeps trying to work through it, and I'm like, stop. Just don't. Just stop. So, yeah.
Okay, Torie, what have you got?
wow, yeah. So this is going to be a real palate cleanser here. We're just going to jump like way to the other side of things, which like I was telling my husband I was coming to do this, and he was like, "Oh, so which serial killer or true crime thing are you going to talk about?" And I was like, "Hold on to your butts." Because it's none of that. I chose The Old Man of Crater Lake, which is an urban legend, but not an urban legend. It's a real thing. So The Old Man of Crater Lake is actually a log. And I'll explain all about this stuff. But the way I heard about this, I'm in a book club at my work, and we read everything. And I, of course, can't remember the name of the book, but it was a guy who went to every national park across the US. Like, he just took a year and he went to every park and he went to all the interesting things. And so he told the story about the old man, and I just kind of became obsessed. And so I've been trying now for like 3 or 4 years, whenever I read this book, where I'm like, hey, what's our summer vacation? Let's go see the old man. Like, I want to go hunt the old man on the river. And all of this sounds like I am a serial killer, but hold on. So the old man is not, in fact, an old man, but it's a tree. It's a hemlock tree, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so they call him the old man most of the time, but sometimes they refer to him as the Crater Lake ghost tree. But I'm just going to say old man and a lot of he's and hims, because in my mind, it's a dark place in here. We won't go there. Anyway.
I think we've already been there.
Yes. Like-minded souls, you understand.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, he's a hemlock tree, and he's been in Crater Lake for well over a century at this point, though they did carbon date him, and he's more than 450 years old. So this is a very old tree who is now a log. And the part that gets people kind of infatuated with the old man is the fact that he floats upright. So instead of like laying flat, like when you throw sticks and whatnot into the rivers and they just go down, he stands straight up and he bobs through Crater Lake and just travels all over the place. So there's like 3 feet of him that's exposed above the water line, and the rest of it, the submerged portion, like it's so well preserved because Crater Lake is so cold.
Where is Crater Lake?
Oh, sorry, up in Oregon?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's in Southern Oregon.
I assume because you seem familiar with it, but I'm like, I'm ignorant, so.
I've been there, and I may or may not have a picture of it.
Oh, so jealous. I want to find the old man. So, okay, yeah. So, like I said, he's been there a long time. Like, there are pictures like way back, early 1900s. I think I might have seen one from like the very late 1800s. I can't remember. The first sighting and the kind of the beginning of tracking of the old man was right around 1896. So people have been following the old man for some time at this point. And they like track where he goes. Like there's a map, like I can go find it for you and send it to you if you want to put it out there. But there's a map where they tracked him for like a month or so. And it shows all over Crater Lake where this standing log has gone. Like this dude travels almost a mile on a daily basis, despite the fact that it's so huge and it stands upright. And he just kind of wanders around the lake and he just goes wherever he wants.
Wow.
Yeah. I love it. And I there was something they said, like he went up to 4 miles in a single day. Like, and it's not always with like wind patterns. So part of the mystique, because they're like, the wind is blowing, you know, west to east, but he's actually going to go east to west because he wants to go check something else out. I don't know. It's fascinating. I love this log. Like I said, it's, I think, what did they say? It's about 30 feet, 35 feet. Why didn't I write this down? It's a very large tree and you only get the 3 feet above it, but it is so buoyant that like an actual person, an actual human, normal sized person can stand on top of the old man and float around with him. And nothing. You can just travel with him. I don't think you're allowed to touch him anymore from everything I've read. But there are pictures of people just like jumping on and hanging out. And yeah, I think this is where some of the legends started. But anyway, so yeah, he, apart from being kind of like this cool, I can't even say urban legend because he's real. He is there. But I keep saying urban legend because there's so many other things tied to him. But before I dive into those, like I found this really cool fact where this tree trunk, like the top 3 feet of it, or like right around the water line, it actually serves as one of the few near surface habitats for this very, very specific type of moss in Crater Lake. Like usually it's found like at a much greater depths or whatever, but somehow the old man has cultivated this very specific moss. And so it's like now this like protected specimen or whatever, which I just thought was just kind of weird. And again, I love it. Okay. But so some of the cool stories about the old man. My favorite one is the fact that the old man controls the weather. And I think this is one of the most popular stories that you'll hear about the old man and what like most interested me to go find him because maybe I want to test this theory. I don't know.
Maybe.
Absolutely, I do. When I like you get the call from jail, I'd be like, the old man totally controls the weather. It means I succeeded.
You're going to post it and be like, I know what this is about.
Yes.
Go back to episode 170, whatever, and know the history. But back in like 1988, so they've got almost like 100 years already of tracking and monitoring the old man. But in 1988, there was some research that was going on in Crater Lake, and they had a little submersible. And so they wanted to go kind of explore the bottom of the lake. And like I said, the old man is very tall or long, whatever. You don't see it, but long.
It's also an insanely deep lake, if I remember.
Yes. It's something almost like 2000. It was like 1986, something like that. It's huge. Wow. It's massively deep, but he floats everywhere. He's never been like grounded, but he just floats everywhere.
Huh.
So they wanted to preserve the old man. They wanted to take him out. They didn't want to hit him with a submersible or do anything to harm him while they're doing this research. So they took the old man and they tied him up on the eastern shore of Wizard Island, which is a whole other thing unto itself. Yeah. But they tied him up onto the island. And I think this was in like August. So generally kind of warm-ish weather, like starting to move into fall weather, but usually pretty warm. So they tied him up on this island. It'd been a very nice day. And then after they tied him up, this storm comes in out of nowhere. Like they don't even have time to really get the submersible anywhere. The storm just blows in and like it makes it impossible to do any of the research. They can't do anything with the submersible. And so they're like, okay, we'll wait it out, I guess. But it just keeps getting worse. And then it starts snowing in August out of nowhere. And so they finally start thinking like, maybe we've angered the old man. So I guess they sneak back to the island. I don't know why they're sneaking. I don't know who's watching them, but they say like they sneak back to the island and they release the old man from his captivity on Wizard Island. They let him go. And then the weather just blows over. And it's a nice August day again, like out of nowhere.
Lesson learned.
Yeah. Don't mess with the old man. You can stand on him, but do not take him out of the water or we're going to get a legit snowpocalypse. Who knows how far his reach is? Part of why I want to test this.
How are you going to test it? Are you going to tie him up and keep him captive?
I am. I'm going to take pictures like ransom. You want your old man back? Let's see how much snow we can get. For anyone, I love snow and cold, and so anything above like 70 degrees is miserable. So bring on the old man in the snow. I love it. Yeah.
You'd love the Oregon coast then living there.
I've pondered moving there many times. One of the other, so there's a couple other lore, I guess, tied to the old man. The controlling the weather, I think, is everyone's favorite because I could find a lot more on that than anything else. But they also think that he's a good luck charm. And so touching or climbing on top of the old man is going to bring you good luck. It doesn't say for how long, but I would make a yearly visit for a good luck trip on the old man. There's stories about him being a guardian spirit, and I have theories about that one that I'll get into. I couldn't find anything connecting this stuff, but I'll get there. And then one of my other favorites is that he has predictive powers. So depending on the tree's position and like when and where in the lake he can be found, he can predict future events or conditions at the lake. So weather or wind or I don't know. I couldn't find any more details on that. And I really tried to find because I was like, but what does he predict? Like lottery numbers? Or are we just talking weather? Because that's less exciting for me.
I want to know how he's communicating these predictions.
I can't. I star charts if the moon is waxing or waning and whether or not the old man is East Coast or West Coast. I'm not totally sure. I really did try and find more on that and I just couldn't. But and one of the other things is that he's immortal. I really wanted it to be that if you hugged the old man, you could also be immortal, but it's just him. Just the old man is immortal.
Okay, but I think you should still test that.
Yes.
I'm still going to test it. I'm going to have to like tie my husband up because he does not want me to get arrested, but I am going to jump in the old man. It's going to be like gator wrestling in the water. Trying to drag the old man out and be like, just 1 minute, babe, hold on, it'll take 15 minutes.
Okay, you just beg ignorance, right? You're just like, oh, I didn't, what? This log is what? It's just a log, you guys.
It's not a floating log. I don't know I didn't want to run it over with my boat. They legit have like all the boat captains or whoever, like almost anyone who boats on Crater Lake, they have some special channel or something where they just tell each other where the old man is so that you don't hit him with your boat. Like it's a daily occurrence where they're like, oh, he's out on the East Coast 2 miles, whatever. So yeah, he's kind of a celebrity despite the fact that it's a log.
We have dumber celebrities, so
It's true. I would rather know more about the log than
yes.
We'll just end there. So anyway, I also found while I was looking at this, because again, I was trying to look into some of these other lores. And so the part about the guardian spirit, I did find a story from the Klamath, I'm not sure how to say this, Klamath Native American tribe that's kind of Southern Oregon, Northern California area. And so they have this whole story about Lao, who is the god of the underworld, and Skell, who is the god of the above world. And so the way the story goes is that Lao emerged from Mount Mazama, which was this huge mountain volcano that exploded, and that's what made Crater Lake. So Lao emerged out of Mount Mazama, and he fell in love with a Klamath woman while he was out and about. But the woman's father, who of course was a chief, did not approve of the marriage. He wasn't going to let it happen, forbade it. I don't know how you tell a god no, but he was told no. And so Lao got super, super pissed off about everything. And he began just setting the forest on fire, basically, just scorching the earth and forcing this tribe to like flee, basically, from his rage. So that's when Skell steps in, and he lived in Mount Shasta. I didn't actually look where that was, but you've got 2 competing mountains now. So he comes out to the rescue because he's there for the people. And so there's just huge fight, big battle, everything goes on, volcano explodes. And so in the end, Skell is the victor and Lao is defeated. But the caldera is what was left in the battlefield after their big fight. And so when it filled in with all of the rains and the waters, that's what Crater Lake became. So that was how their legend of how Crater Lake came into existence, when in fact it was a mountain. And I mean, this tribe has been there, it has to be for thousands of years, because I think the Mount Mazama was several thousand years ago to make Crater Lake. Yeah. So all of this like rich history about how Crater Lake even came into existence. And so again, I couldn't find anything concrete, But I think the fact that he's considered a guardian spirit has to come from this legend. Like after the battle between the underworld and the above world, and then there's randomly an old man who floats in the water. And he's good luck, and he controls the weather. Like, how is he not tied to Lao or Skel? And I am still looking because I just
Urban
want it to
legends
be
are
true.
rough. I'm trying to research.
I know.
And I
So
believe
that-
Mount Shasta is Northern California.
Okay.
So not that far, like as the crow flies sort of situation before
Right.
there were boundaries.
Okay. Yeah. And as a god, who cares? Like,
Right.
they'll just get there. But that's why I think he's a guardian spirit, is I think it came from this legend of Lao and Skel, which I absolutely love.
It's kind of perfect. I love the ones that you can actually sit there and connect to what probably happened in real life, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
why this whole tale came to be, because you're there and all of a sudden a freaking volcano is erupting. That's terrifying. You don't know what the hell that is. It was a mountain. Now it's
Now it's like a deep caldera, like one of the deepest in at least the US. I can't remember if it was worldwide, but it's massively deep.
and it's gorgeous is the thing, because of it's something like the minerals and all of that that
Mhm.
came from the eruption. If I remember, it's bear in mind, it's been a long time, but it's this gorgeous deep blue. It is so pretty. It's jewel. Yes.
Mhm.
So it's really worth visiting.
Yeah. Yeah. And whatever, like the minerals and stuff that have been in there, like that's what's preserving everything. And so there's actually like a whole bunch of other, I found a whole bunch of other mysterious deaths and fun things of Crater Lake because of the water. Like there's this thing about with it being so cold and clear and this specific combination of minerals or whatever it is, that there's apparently people think there's just a treasure trove of bodies down there that are perfectly preserved, like the bottom portion of the old man. Can't prove it. There were mysterious deaths. They're a whole bunch of, not a whole bunch, I don't have numbers, I couldn't find it, but there's been a fair amount of people to just go hiking and just go missing, and no one can figure it out. And so like 3 of the ones that I found just little snippets about, there was the Cornelius incident in 1947, where just this man named Mr. Cornelius, he weirdly and inexplicably like handed his wife his wallet and his watch before sliding down a rock chute and drowning himself in the lake for no reason. Just, he's like, here, wife, gone.
Wow.
No one knows why. She had no idea why. No one knows why. And like I said, there's been a bunch of hikers that have disappeared over the years. Apparently, they just vanish without a trace on the lake's rim.
Of course.
Of course. No one knows why. And apparently, there's incidents or reports of like some visitors say that they just get this like feeling or this inexplicable urge to like jump into the lake. And so there's been all of these accidents and near misses, and people come out and they're like, well, I don't know why. I needed to. I had to jump in the lake. No one knows why.
I feel like the old man knows that they did bad things, and then the old man
Right.
is like, all right, this is your warning.
Yeah. And the ones who mysteriously disappeared did too many bad things.
That's right. They don't get a warning, or they
No,
already
they're
got a
just
warning.
gone.
We don't know.
That's true.
Yeah. And so the last couple things I wanted to end with, because again, I just went down this rabbit hole and I want to go there more than ever. So on top of the old man who has been found, there are also reports of a Crater Lake monster, like Nessie for Crater Lake. Some dragon-like creature that inhabits the lake's depths that have been there forever because it's cold enough to preserve everything. It's the fountain of youth for not people. And I think one of the latest reports that I could find was back in like 2002, and the woman's name was Maddie Hatcher, and like she and her friends were out in a rowboat, and they swear that they saw this massive dragon-like creature swim under their boat. And so there's reports back that it's this the descriptions often include a long neck, a serpentine body, and dark coloration. So people are speculating that it could be a surviving prehistoric creature because of the magical waters of the lake, But most of the skeptics think that it's just a big fish.
Yep.
Or, and again, can't find anything concrete. I'm tying them together because I'm now in love with this Klamath legend. So they say that Lau was defeated, remember. They say that Lau, because he was so mad, he didn't go back to the underworld, but instead he like turned himself into a giant crayfish. And so this monstrous crustacean is said to snatch people off the rim. Those hikers that have gone missing, they were snatched off the rim and he drags them into the water. Not sure why, because he's angry still.
He's hated their stupid faces.
He's still in love with someone, and if you're walking by, you know what? Like, hell hath no fury, but I feel like dudes' egos would turn into a crayfish and drag people down. Like, why not? I would.
Hell hath no ego.
Yeah.
Like that.
Although being sentenced to being a giant crayfish for eternity would tend to piss me off.
Well, I think he did it himself. He chose for himself to become a giant crayfish.
Well, maybe
and just snatch people off the rim.
Well, maybe he's like, now I'm stuck as this stupid crustacean.
Yeah, one poor decision, and you're a lifelong crustacean.
Right?
I made a mistake.
Seemed like a good idea at the time.
It's like punching drywall. It's a mistake, but
always. But yeah, they think the legend is rooted in there's a native crayfish, however you say it, population in the lake.
Yeah.
So that's where it came from. But I choose to believe that the old man and the giant crayfish are actually in cahoots. And those missing hikers might have deserved it. And we just don't understand their wisdom. This is what I'm choosing to believe. So
I love that. I would have totally harassed my dad with that because he hated crustaceans because as a kid in Oregon, it was his job they would send him out to catch the crayfish for, we're going to cook these up. You need to go out and get some, and he fucking hated it. And so I used to send him pictures if I was anywhere with lobsters or anything like that.
This would explain a lot about why he sent you pictures.
No, he started the snake thing. Therefore, I returned with the crustacean thing. It was he brought a real snake in, didn't tell me it was in this. It was a baby snake that he'd found in this measuring cup. Stuck that in my face, the real living snake. So he's lucky. Poor man. When he had ALS, I could have just put anything on him and he wouldn't have been able to do anything about it. I am not that cruel. That would have been fucked up. I would have laughed my ass off. And honestly, so would he have. But
it was cruel. It would have been fucked up, but I totally would have done it.
And he would have appreciated how fucked up and right it was. That was the thing. So
nice.
But yeah, that had to have been in Oregon. He was born in California, but he spent his childhood and the beginning of his adulthood in Oregon. So it totally would have worked. I wish I'd known about the crayfish back then.
Yeah.
But I love that there's just a freaking log in a lake, and it has all these stories,
and it's just bobbing merrily along.
It is.
He minds his own business and does his own thing, but now I'm just like obsessed with this random log in the middle of a lake.
I think there's still a lodge that you can stay at right there by the lake. And then they have kind of like a ferry that you can take out into the lake.
Yeah. There was the sites that I use the most. I had nationalparkservice.com, npca.org, and treehugger.com. They had a lot of stuff, but there was a lot. I think it was the National Park Service about ways that you could go see the old man supervised because they don't like touching him.
But you have to sneak out there. I think you can swim in the lake. I don't know what the boat rules are because I know that I've never seen a bunch of motored boats running on except theirs.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I can just get one of those inflatable things and a tiny little paddle. Like if I'm on vacation, I got nothing better to do than paddle in the lake to find the old man.
Yeah. With those little inflatable kayaks.
Yeah. Or even what is the stand-up surfing
paddleboard.
Paddleboarding. Yeah. I'm good enough at that. I'll just spend my entire day on the lake hunting the old man.
I really kind of wish someone would put a giant hat on it.
Just
I don't know
change out
why.
some things, put a pair of sunglasses on it at one
Yes.
point. The drawback is that it's freaking cold, like you said. So
Yeah.
take a scuba suit, like
Mhm.
take one of those dry suits or whatever they call them, and then you're good to go. Insulated.
Oh, yeah. I have thought this out long and hard. It's probably unhealthy, but I'm getting there someday.
And we're right there with you. We're like, if we can aid this venture in any way.
If you want to make a giant hat, I'll go put it on the old man. Before I'm arrested.
Oh, now I've got to torment myself with what kind of hat does the old man need?
A tall hat, but you wouldn't be able to see it very well, so it needs to be lighter. What's
I'm
light?
thinking
Yeah,
it needs to
like
be a
pink.
giant newspaper hat
Ooh.
One of
Like
those
the ones
paper chef hats.
or a chef hat.
Oh.
There's so many possibilities. And I'm thinking baseball cap, but what should be on it? If it's me, it's going to be something rude. I mean,
What about a pussy hat? What with those pink, those pink hats?
yes.
Go make a feminist statement and put that on the log. I'm sure he's for us.
Or like my walking hat that's just a pink ball cap that says bitch on it.
It's got to be bigger than that, though. He's like
Yeah, well, yes.
huge.
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 Yeah.
Oh.
But also, if you weighted a body down, that would be the perfect place to hide a body.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And preserve.
is it though? Yeah, I'm like, if it's so well preserved, like when they find it, aren't you going to be in more trouble?
The body's preserved, but the stuff on the body wouldn't be preserved necessarily.
How are they even going to find the body?
If they're not going down there and looking so far.
Yeah.
They had a submersible. They have to go down there sometimes, right?
You would think there's those people that do this for a living, dive into rivers and lakes
Yes.
and stuff like that. There was I remember there some guy had, I don't know if it was a Twitter or what. No, he was doing videos. I think it was YouTube. And he was just he'd find old weapons guns people had chucked off into the water to get rid of the evidence and stuff. And that's just what he does, is he goes to these different waterways to see what he can find, bodies and submerged cars.
There's the guy who has the who do it with the magnets.
Oh yeah.
They'll go anything that goes over water and they'll just chuck the big magnet in and then see what they can pull out. And sometimes they have to call the police because it's like it's a vehicle or it's a weapon or
found these 20 guns.
Yeah.
Found these muskets in the bottom of the water. All right, it's your turn.
oh boy.
Follow that up.
Challenge accepted. I was feeling this week very verklempt in that we were living in an uncertain world.
Yes.
So I decided I was in need of some unrelenting, good-natured mayhem.
Oh,
That was what I went for. I tried to go dark for this one. I started researching like 3 or 4 different things, and some of them were disgustingly dark. And then I just said, fuck it. The world outside is dark and depressing enough. So bring me a fool, unrelenting in his buffoonery.
All right. I dig it.
I have set the bar.
Do this.
Horace de Vere Cole.
Okay.
So Horace was born.
I'm like, am I supposed to know this? Said it very.
I've been looking at this for months, so I'm just waiting for the right time to bust it out. So Horace was born on May 5th in 1881 in County Cork, Ireland. So, because I love me some historical context, in 1881, President James Garfield was both elected and assassinated.
All right.
In rapid succession. He was only in office for 6 months. There was the infamous gunfight at the OK Corral. Tsar Alexander II was assassinated in Russia. Lots of assassinations in 1881. Booker T. Washington founded the Tuskegee Institute. Clara Barton founded the Red Cross. And these 3 people there were a lot of people born in 1881. I just narrowed it down to 3. Ulysses S. Grant, Pablo Picasso, and P.G. Wodehouse were all born in 1881.
Nice.
I just thought that was a nice kind of cross section of people. And there are some people out there going, I don't know who any of those freaking people are.
Really?
It's okay.
Okay.
Everybody's got to know who Picasso is, or at least hear the word and go artist.
Mm-hmm.
But so we'll go back to Horace. His father was a British military officer, William Utting Cole. The name Utting is, what the hell? And his mother was Mary de Vere. And she was related to, they were both related to all kinds of politicians and poets and famous. I just couldn't even write them all down because some of them were like, they claimed to be related to, and I'm like, yeah, okay, we don't need that one. His father died of cholera when Horace was young, and he himself had a bout with diphtheria at age 10 that left him hearing impaired. And oh my God, I am now forever traumatized because Wikipedia had a photo of some, like what you would see if you said to someone, open your mouth and say, ah, and they had diphtheria. Don't look.
Ooh.
Don't go there. Oh, look.
I kind of want to now.
It was disgusting. It was absolutely disgusting. I was like, and I work on the podcast. That was one of the most disgusting things I've seen. As a teen, he was sent to boarding school at Eton College, which of course is very hoity-toity. It's the hoitiest of the toys. After the Second Boer War began, oh wow, I really misspelled the word began.
Wow.
Anyway, after the Second Boer War began in 1899, Horace was commissioned as a lieutenant and was soon promoted to acting captain. In July of 1900, he was wounded by a dum-dum bullet. So I thought the word dum-dum bullet, and I was like, what's that, a rubber bullet? I'm thinking in modern terms. No, a dum-dum bullet was an expanding bullet.
Ooh.
That when it hit you, it, yeah, exactly. The face you're making.
It does that.
Yeah. So he was in a South African hospital from July until September when he was, this is the quote, invalided out of the army. You can make anything a verb if you try hard enough. He donated, does say something about him. He donated his disability pension to the War Widows and Orphans Fund. Now, it was not a great deal of money, but still, he donated it. Mm-hmm. He returned home and went to Trinity College, where he didn't complete his degree, which that's a big thing in my family.
Oh, that people start college but don't finish it?
Yeah. Okay. It's graduate school. I didn't find out until I stopped going to graduate school. Like one day I just said, fuck this, I can't do it anymore. I can't remember if it was my mother or my sister said, oh my God, your brother did the same thing. And I'm like, excuse me, what? Nobody had ever mentioned it. I will point out my nephew now has a doctorate. So it's all good. It's all good. He redeemed us. When his paternal grandmother died, Horace inherited a big estate, but he couldn't afford the upkeep, so he sold it to an uncle. And so at this point, you're probably wondering, when is old Horace going to start getting interesting? Okay, then. As an undergraduate, he posed as the uncle of the Sultan of Zanzibar because the Sultan of Zanzibar was visiting London at that time. So he and his best friend, Adrian Stephen, who was the brother of Virginia Stephen, who later got married and became Virginia Woolf. They paid a ceremonial visit to Cambridge in robes and turbans. After the tour, they got the whole thing. They got the fucking tour of the town. They got the tour of the college. I think they were given a feast. They were fed. Okay, so they were driven back to the train station so they could catch the train to London. But here's the catch. If they took the train to London, they would have missed curfew at the college. So they get to the train station and basically ding-dong ditch. They ran out the exit, took a cab to a friend's house, changed back into their regular clothes. The next day, Horace gave a local paper an interview detailing the whole thing, including photos, which was proclaimed a great joke. So when he would do these things, he didn't stay quiet about them. he was
If
trumpeting
he had
them.
social media, he would already have been arrested. And
Yes. So he was also known to wander the streets of London with a cow's teat extended through the open fly of his pants.
how is he with the cow's teeth?
I didn't
There's
ask.
just some three-teated cow walking around. That's terrible.
I'm sure there were
It's really awful.
I'm sure there were stockyards or butchers or something.
He's like, listen, I just need one teeth.
Don't ask questions. Just
I
give me
will
the
pay
teeth.
you $5.
So, but here's what he would do. He would walk around with this thing hanging out at the front of his peach until he had caused enough of an uproar. Then he would pull out a pair of scissors and cut it off.
So he was going through multiple teeth.
Yeah.
So he got the full udder because this is what, like once a week?
It doesn't say how often, but he did it more than once. And I'm just like, to have people notice and think it's you, and then you pull out scissors
I
and
just
cut
cut
it off.
that shit off.
Yes. I just am like, I think I would have liked to have known him. So in 1919, he got married to his first wife, and he took her to Venice on their honeymoon. They happened to be there on April Fool's Day. So he had a load of horse manure dropped in the city's largest public square, which you're like, yeah, whatever. Venice can only be reached by boat. There are no horses there. So he had it shipped in and deposited in the park for people to go, where the hell did this come from? This marriage, I'm like, wait, I lost my place. This marriage was to Irish heiress Denise Lynch, and they had a daughter, Valerie, before they divorced after 10 years of marriage. Shortly after their marriage ended, he went into voluntary exile in France after losing all of his money on Canadian land speculation. Just like, so apparently he was a prankster, but he didn't understand other people could be.
I'd sell him a bridge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So his best known hoax is remembered as the Dreadnought hoax. And it has to be good if it gets its own title. I mean, you can look at Wikipedia, the Dreadnought hoax. It's a thing. So he and some friends, and this time including Virginia Woolf, who I never would have pegged as a lighthearted, frolicking prankster, disguised themselves in turbans and robes and blackface, and convinced the captain of the Royal Navy warship, the HMS Dreadnought, that they were an official Abyssinian delegation, and got a tour of the flagship of the fleet, which was the most technologically advanced ship of its time. This ship was considered the national symbol of like safety and national defense and their might on the sea. So there was another ship, the HMS Hawk, and apparently the sailors were prone to pranking each other. So some of the crew of the HMS Hawk approached Horace and said, couldn't you play one of your jokes on the Dreadnought? Because they need taking down a bit. The one drawback of the disguises was that they couldn't eat or drink anything or they risked ruining the makeup. So Adrian acted as their interpreter. So just to show you how huge their audacity was, I'm going to read you a quote.
Oh, no.
A friend of Stephen's sent a telegram to the commander-in-chief home fleet of the vessels defending Britain, stating that Prince Macallan of Abyssinia and suite arrived 4:20 today, Weymouth. I don't know how to pronounce it. He wishes to see Dreadnought. Kindly arrange, meet them on arrival. The message was signed Harding Foreign Office. So Cole had found a post office staffed only by women, as he thought they were less likely to ask questions about the message.
What? Women less likely to ask questions?
No.
What?
So
Okay.
Cole, with his entourage, went to London's Paddington Station, where he claimed that he was Herbert Cholmondeley of the Foreign Office and demanded a special train to Weymouth. and the station master arranged a VIP coach for them. So they didn't have to pay for any of this. They went in and bullshitted their way through first of all, they sent fraudulent telegram. Then they bullshitted with the train guys and got a free VIP passageway to the dreadnought. So the group was welcomed with an honor guard. Since the ship didn't have an Abyssinian flag, old. They flew the Zanzibar flag and played Zanzibar's anthem, which I think is still pretty accomplished on short notice. Here's another country you've probably never heard of. Anthem. Please play it. Be ready to play this in a couple of hours. The fake group toured the ship and even requested prayer mats so they could bestow fake military honors on the ship's crew. And apparently when they saw something that they were acting was very impressive, that impressed them, they would yell, "Bunga bunga." When the prank was later discovered, Horace happily admitted to it and submitted photos of the princes to the London papers. The Navy wanted him arrested, but he hadn't actually broken any laws. And I do need to note that one of the party had a cousin who was part of the ship's crew, part of the admiral's group, not just like a guy dumping the slops in the sea, but one of the higher ups. And the guy did not recognize him. Horace did not slow down much as he got older. In fact, he frequently targeted members of parliament, business owners, and naval officers that he felt were pompous figures of authority.
Nice.
So he once got a group of friends to dress as workmen and dig a trench across Piccadilly, which has always been one of London's main thoroughfares. So let's just disrupt the city's traffic for shits and giggles. An old school friend of his was elected to Parliament. So he reached out to his friend and challenged him to a foot race down the street. And he's like, "I'm going to give you a 10-yard head start. We'll race to the corner." The guy's like, "All right." Why? Why did this man agree to this? That's what I can't figure out. So before the race, though, Horace had taken his gold pocket watch and slipped it into the man's pocket. So they start running. And of course, the guy is ahead of them. As soon as they run past a police officer, Horace starts yelling, "Stop thief," gets the man arrested. The police chases him down, of course, finds the stolen watch in his pocket. Horace immediately explained the joke and they were released. But then Horace started waving his walking stick about as though he were directing a band. So the two got taken into custody again. The other guy was released and Horace was found guilty of a breach of the peace. Like that sounds
like his entire life.
That's his middle name, is breach of the peace. He once threw a party where all the guests had the word bottom in their last name. Threw a whole party for these people that he didn't know. This man knew how to commit to the bit.
Yeah, he did.
Yes.
There are a lot of like bottoms up and shit like that.
Should have been. Then there was a theater presentation that he found pretentious. So he bought 8 adjoining seats and hired 8 bald men to sit in those seats. And he painted a single letter on each man's head. So it spelled out the word bollocks. So when the lights came up, that's all you could see.
In a bollock.
And somebody was like, "Well, that was so cruel to those." And I'm like, dear, they knew.
Right.
He hired them. What do you think he did? Knock them out and painted a letter on their head?
Just some unconscious bald men. Rupee.
So in 1931, he married Mabel Winifred Mary Wright. And he had a son. But apparently it wasn't, she had a son. Let me put it this way.
Okay.
She had a son, and it said, because Wikipedia said whose natural father was, and it named an author. But this was Tristan de Vere Cole. So I hate to say this. This just killed me. You get so far into this. A poor and broke Horace died of a heart attack in 1936 at the age of 55.
Damn.
In France, where he had been exiled to.
Yeah.
So I do want to point out, I have to give a shout out to a man named Willie Clarkson, because he was the theater costumer who outfitted Horace and his friends for both pranks, including the skin coloring and the application of fake beards. because there's you can see these photos online. Virginia Woolf is in one of these photos. You can't tell it's a woman. So now, granted, probably not a lot of people in London had seen people in turbans and robes, but I thought the guy did a bang up job. You wouldn't look at this and go, "Why, look, it's a Tom and Jerry cartoon. He's wearing a mop as a beard." It's not like that. This guy put some effort into this.
But props for all that effort.
Yes. And for the fact that 5 years later, they call him up. Hey, can you call him up? Did we have phones then? I don't know. They reached out to him and said, hey, remember when, and would you like to do it again? Oh my
gosh. I'd like to picture them just sending in a Morse code.
That does make a better picture. It really does. My sources were Wikipedia, dumbartonoaks.org, and Reddit. Okay, I've had some interesting stuff. So I just thought this is what we need. We need this man who was joyously chaotic. He really wasn't hurting anybody.
Yeah. We need him to come and go after all our politicians.
Oh my God.
I want to be his friend. I want to meet him. Like, I would absolutely go be their fake interpreter and dress. I would do it.
Exactly.
So quickly.
Exactly.
I will be your interpreter. I'm picturing if anybody watched Key and Peele, the anger translator for Obama.
Yes.
Yes. You motherfucking. Okay. I was like, I could totally be an anger translator. Where is my job? I need to go do that for somebody. I can do that.
You would do that very well.
But I don't love pranks, but I enjoy hearing about them now that they're done.
Yes, and they weren't done to you.
Correct.
That makes a big difference.
Sort of. I mean, it depends on the prank.
Well, these I like because they were funny.
Yes.
And they were...
and he didn't let the person get arrested, for example. That would have been too far.
That
but he's like, okay, I kid. He could have been arrested right then when he did that. I played that prank and I sent you after that person.
Yeah.
But he wasn't until but they arrested him for waving around a stick like he was directing something.
I think he must have waved the stick at the police officer.
Probably.
I'm thinking, or the police officer.
Or he was directing traffic with it, and they were like, no, that is a breach of peace.
I feel like there was something more going on there, because that was the exact definition used in several places, in at least two. I won't say several, at least two different places, waving his walking stick like he was directing a band. And I'm like, that's an odd.
Yeah,
that's an odd.
Okay. I feel like I could walk outside and do that, and nobody would look twice at me.
I'm like, was there a bee? Waving it at the bee? I would totally buy that. I would be like, my dude, swing away. I'll duck over here.
There you go. Sufficiently lightened at the end of that episode.
Yes.
I feel like there was something for everyone today.
Yes.
Pretty much. We didn't do ghosts, but whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not as big in Oregon. They're big on urban legends. They're big on cryptids. But
everybody
they're big on serial killers.
Or serial killers.
Yeah.
You don't need to have everything. Just get your niche.
That's right.
Yeah. Cryptids and serial killers.
He was early for Oregon, though, compared to when they started real popping. But Manson had happened. I almost did a here's the things that are happening, because there was a lot of shit happening in 68 and 69, of course, politically, worldwide, but also Manson and all of that shit was happening. So, yeah.
And when I do my here's what was happening at that time, I just pick out the bizarre shit that makes sense to me. That doesn't mean anybody else. I mean, any historian listening to that would be like, why did she pick that?
That's quite a cross section.
But that's what I like. Things that are weird and interesting and perhaps don't belong together, but there you have it.
Do you like things that don't match, do you?
I do. Which is weird, because no, I am a very matched person. Like my socks.
My kids, it was the thing. My
Yeah.
daughter started with the different socks on every day. They never matched. And my brain was just like, just
My
a little
girl-
silent scream.
My girls did that. I thought it was because they were not inspired to match their socks, but no, they do it to this day. So.
Yeah, because I would roll the socks and then
Yes.
unroll the socks and then wear the unmatching ones. And I was never one to stop. If she wanted to clash, if she wanted, whatever, you pick your clothes. You're an individual human being, and that was the rule here. So
I once had a passive aggressive bitch at playgroup tell me, leans over to me. She only had one child. And of course, I have the girls who are, their personalities are not quite as big as mine, but fucking close. And she leans over to me. The kids are all playing, and she goes, I just think it's so sweet the way you let the girls dress themselves. And I got the message she was sending. She did not think it was cute. The child was all dressed in a little button down and khakis. And
I just love that you dress your child like a yuppie fuck.
Yeah. What? Like, I don't know why you would ever buy anything nice for a kid. I don't have kids, so I can't say, but I'm like, most of the time, they're free-spirited and kind of messy. So why are you going to buy a nice button-down and khakis when they're going to go roll in the mud and eat, like, dirt pie?
And they're always sticky.
Yeah. Just let them wear whatever they want. You're going to have to wash it in 2 minutes anyway.
Yeah.
Right? That was also my
exactly.
rule, though, was like, even if I bought them something nice and they wore it, my rule was, I'm not going to stop you from playing in mud or whatever. And we went, you can go, you're not supposed to do this. But when they're little, we'd go to Garden of the Gods all the time. You work off energy. And we went there when it was icy, and there was this perfect rock to get on and just slide down the ice. It was the best slide ever. But when you leave Garden of the Gods, their clothes were stained red, rust red, but it was the most fun. They were like strapped rocks, but we actually, it's terrible. A bunch of people started doing it after we did it, but
we had some other friends, another friend of the family who affectionately referred to our girls as the Skittles, because at that time they had 2 boys, and the boys would have just dressed in brown if you had let them. So because Lucy and Dickie did dress themselves, and they would put on, the polka dot shirt and the floral pants and the just 87 bright colors and all the different patterns. And I was like, so he would ask his wife, oh, are the Skittles coming over today?
And there's the cat that I was waiting for. They waited a long time.
They did.
But yeah, my daughter still dresses. Technically, she clashes, but it's worked so well for her. You would never, know.
She's very stylish.
She is very stylish. But I know I was not when I was her age.
No.
But
me neither.
Yeah, no. But yeah, it's so weird. It was always so weird to me. The parents that wanted to squash every bit of personality in their kids. Just what do you want them to grow up to be? An automaton? That's weird. That's weird. But anyway, on that note, hit us with your website again and your last book out.
The website is toriefox.net, and I'm mostly on Instagram. I have a Facebook, Torie Fox the author. They're both Torie Fox the author. But mostly I'm on Instagram because I like looking at pictures and short videos. And so my Facebook is sadly lacking, but
mine needs to be. But I do really enjoy Instagram for that reason. I can just go look at pictures. There's some political, but not as much as Facebook for fucking certain. And I can shut off my brain and watch the videos, and I can just post videos because my love language is memes. So, and pictures in general. So
yes.
All right. Thank you for coming on and sharing some urban legends.
Thanks for having me. This was super fun.
Do you know what's going to happen? There's going to show up, a goddamn hat is going to show up on the old man, and we're going to get blamed for it.
They'd better have our sticker on it, you guys.
That's right.
Oh, perfect.
I need it to happen. And thank you everybody for tuning in.
Yes.
And we'll bring you some chaos
in the new year. Because this is the December.
This is November. It's flipped because of how it was booked.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Well, in December and then in the new year.
So Merry freaking Christmas.
Well, it's Happy Thanksgiving now. Damn it. All right.
Whatever.
Bye.
Muzzle. Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back with more shenanigans.